I've never done this before. I've got multiple cameras. I've got a mic on. I've got lighting all around me. I'm hopeful that this works. I'm learning as I go, so let's give it a shot. Sami, I know I was supposed to do a writing project that I was supposed to write from the perspective of your dad, but instead I want to give you a different perspective. I want to walk you through what the thing you just received means to me and why I made it, and maybe do a little bit of perspective of how it relates to you. I made you this because I know you love records, and I know walking through the streets of New York and listening to you talk about vinyls and how you wash them and how you clean them and how you store them. And I knew, and I already started at that point, I knew I was going to do it, but it just reaffirmed in me that this is something you are passionate about, and I want to talk about passion today. I created this thing. It started 6 weeks ago as just like, maybe longer, maybe 2 months ago, as just this idea of something I would make. And I wanted to make you something, and I knew when I remember I asked that question in your room, I said, show me your room. And I remember you were like, oh, don't, I don't want to do it. But the reason I was doing it because I wanted to make sure that it would fit in your room and that you didn't have something that was already very important to you that stored your records. So I took a screenshot. You accused me of taking a screenshot. I did, but this is why I wanted to show you, or I wanted to make something that would fit in that spot that you'd have for a long time. So I chose a record cabinet. The reason for this is because you love records, right? As I said, walking through the streets of New York, talking about how much records meant to you and how you hunt for them. I mean, it's unusual for a 15-year-old, but it's also something that's special and beautiful about you. And I know that you and Mom bonded over music. And I wanted to give you something that you would forever remember her by. And I know that one of the reasons I'm doing this is that when I was a kid and I lived in Rochester, and then the farm town, I would always make these videos for Mom where I would I used all my money to buy a video camera, and I set it up in one corner of the room, and I would just record these long videos for her of just me talking, because it was my one way of communicating with her by video, because there was no way at the time to do a video call. So I would just mail VHS tapes. And when she died, I looked through her stuff, and I wanted to find those tapes so badly because I knew she kept them, and I knew they were somewhere. And they were just something that, like, for me, it was like a big part of my childhood, was recording these videos and mailing them to her. And I would make little comedy videos, and I just would always produce them, and I know she loved them. So I wanted to make this for you to just explain what it means to me to make something like this and why. And I want you to know this wasn't easy, and I don't say that because I want you to appreciate it. I say that because I want you to understand that what you're looking at is something that I spent a long time on. And I thought about every corner and curve, and I thought about how it would look, and I played it in my mind over and over again, just so focused on how it would appear and like what the corners would look like and how the light would reflect. And I just put so much effort into it because it was important to me. And I want you to know that, for example, I started with this idea of a record cabinet. I just Googled, mid-century modern vintage record cabinets. And I came up with this idea of like, oh, you know what, I want to make it obviously deep enough. So I Googled like, what size is a record, right? How do they store them? Are they upright? Do you use dividers? I just basically researched it from step one. And I came up with this idea of the box. And I initially was just going to have storage, but I thought there has to be something more to this. There has to be something that connects you to Nana. And then that's where I came up with the idea of having something in it that would be music related. So I thought about the 70s, because I know that's an era that you guys both appreciate. And so I started Googling just what are 70s, what are like some 70s decorations. And so I obviously came up with a disco ball. Then I started Googling disco balls. Can I buy one? Can I have a disco ball somehow in part of this? And from there, I went through Amazon and I got to this piece of, the search results were, included these like LED strips that had some like functionalities to them. And I wanted to make this like react to music. I wanted it to be like your relationship with her, where it reacts to music. And so I started searching like sound reactive disco balls, and I found these two things on Amazon that are reactive. And so I started building off of that. Okay, great. I have these. What can I do? So I came up with a rough idea. I wanted to use bay laurel for the wood. And I have it sitting around here, but the bay laurel is the stuff that is the lighter wood. The darker is a Peruvian walnut, and the lighter is this bay laurel. And the reason I chose that is it is native to California. And I know that every time you come here, I feel like there's some small part of you that's native to California. And I wanted you to think of us because it's a really rare wood. You can't go buy a lot of bay laurel stuff, but it smells amazing. And it is something that has like a really natural kind of contrasting grain inside of it. And so I started realizing I want it two-tone. I want it to be part walnut. And from there, I had this idea of doing a carve. I wanted it to have a wave effect to it because Mom always loved the beach. And so from there, I came up with the wave and I thought, all right, I got to have one half as a wave, but what do I do with it? And so I just started researching it. How do I involve these like disco balls and put it into this thing? And so I started just kind of noodling on it for days. Every night I would sit in bed and just think about it. How am I going to make this? And so I started to come up with this idea of like, can I do the inside in some way that reflects? Because I wanted it to have an experience of like lighting up your room. I wanted it to light up around you. And so I started thinking about mirrors or how could I do it with mirrors? And so I started just Googling vinyl records that are mirrors. I thought maybe I could make one, but hope maybe someone out there has one. And I found this woman on Etsy who makes custom vinyl mirrors. So I bought that, and then I started thinking about using the reflection, and I came up with the idea of combining the wave pattern of that bay laurel, the carved bay laurel, with some way of getting that light out of there. And so I had this idea of creating spacers and then having that light escape being reflected off of a vinyl album that is reflective as a mirror. And from there, I started thinking that I wanted to do, I wanted it to float, to look like it's floating. I started just kind of workshopping it. It took me a week to kind of go through and calculate all the angles and get it together and build something and make sure that it works and would support the weight. From there, I realized that I wanted you to be able to look in this. I wanted to make this thing like itself part of you and your relationship. And so I had this idea of how do I make this thing a record cabinet itself? So I had this idea of cutting a hole. And the thing that you probably don't know about saws is that there is no saw that cuts a circular hole, right? There's a jigsaw, right? It's going to look like shit though. So you have to find a way to just create this hole. And so I found this router bit that would kind of like zoom around it and would, and it would do it on an axis and carve out this hole. So I decided on getting this glass piece and making it so that it would itself look like a record player. And I had this idea that I wanted to build in more of Mom's stuff so that you had something that would forever remind you of her. And so I used her dresses, and then I just kept going through the bag of her stuff, and I found this earring. And I wanted something with the earring, and I decided I wanted it to be the needle, right? Because you had talked so much about like caring for the needle of a record player. So I came up with this idea of having a needle, and I would use her earring. It was like one straight earring that I didn't use in Diane's. So I wanted to build this spindle, and I'd never done it before. So I just kind of looked at art and real spindles and came up with this idea that I wanted to sit on the top and itself look like a record player, but I also didn't want it to break because I know I want you to have this forever. And so I thought I could use magnets somehow. So I was on vacation with Sarah. We're in San Diego, and I just spent so much time thinking about how would I make this thing look? How would I make this thing bond to the top and be something that looked cool, but you could take it off and you could store stuff on there and it wouldn't break. And so I came up with the idea of just using like really powerful magnets so that you could have this thing and it would just glue itself on there, and it would just like catch and sort of attach itself as a spindle. So I drilled a hole in the bottom. I put Mom's ashes in there, and I sealed up a magnet on the bottom side and then built one into the top so that spindle can slide across and catch exactly where it's supposed to. And the reason I'm walking you through all this is because I want you to understand, like, this wasn't easy. It was hard, but it's something that I committed to, and it's something that I had a vision the entire time that it was for you. And so I fought through, and I just trial and errored everything. I'm not an expert in any of this. I mean, I'm a good woodworker, but I'm not the best. I just know how to not stop. And I know how to Google it, and I know how to figure it out. And I know that when I want something, when I just dream of something, I want to make that thing a reality, and I will stop at nothing to get it done. And so every time I came across a problem, something didn't fit, something didn't work right, I just kept trying. And I just would chuck away the one that didn't work and start again. And then on the top, once I got those LED switches done, I thought, well, I know you, that coin that I had made that you wanted on a necklace meant so much to you. So I wanted to find a way to build in that coin and make it look natural. So I tried to make the top look just like a vintage record player where my coin is in there and then the 2 buttons are on the side. And from there, I knew that I wanted to make it something that looked 70s. So I used mom's dress pattern and I came up with this idea of like, how do I take a piece of fabric and make it a divider? And I know that sounds like dumb and obvious or something, but it's not, because it turns out when you can't cut fabric in a very clean way. So I couldn't just like glue it to a piece of wood because you're going to see the end of it and it's going to look like shit. So I came up with this idea of making wooden channels where the channel would be just wider than the wood. It would go over the top and would hide the edges of the dress. And so workshop that for a while. It took me a week just to figure out like how to make that happen, how to cut these things to perfect angles, because again, it's a series of angles. So how do you make that thing look perfect and stick? And then the first ones I made were too tight and I had to do it again. And the reason I say this is like, this is a story of love. This is a story of, thanks, Dogs. This is a story of love. This is a story of wanting to make something that means something to someone. And I wouldn't stop till it was done. And I wanted you to see the perspective of fighting, of not giving up, of, I don't know how to do it. I didn't know how to do any of that. And you may look at that and say, this is beautiful, right? I hope you do. I think it's beautiful. I think it's one of the best things I've ever made. But I hope you look at that and I hope you think of Nana and I hope you think that this is something beautiful that wasn't easy. And I just kept fighting and working on it. And I just never stopped. And every time there was a problem, I just pushed through it because I knew what I wanted it to look like. And it's just like your future. And I want you to know you could make something beautiful. None of this is hard. All of this, it's not hard. It just takes time. I just learned how to do it. And when there wasn't, the thing that excited me about this project is I wanted to do it. I wanted to learn new things. I wanted to do stuff I'd never done before. And so the perspective I want to share with you is I didn't know how to set up this lighting to make it look like a documentary. I don't know. I just Googled it. I watched some YouTube videos. I set up my camera. I set up this mic that's on me that I hope sounds good, although I have a stuffed up nose, so I sound like a frog right now. I've got this thing where I'm like watching the feedback of, you can't see, but it's like playing it for me. I don't know how to do any of this, but I'm just figuring it out. And I want you to know it's important to me that you figure it out. And so the perspective I want to share with you is this is something that I hope you have with you for the next 40 years. And I mean that. I made it. There are no structural screws in this thing, right? It's all held together with glue and with, it's not going to mean anything to you, but with joinery that will last forever. And so the thing I want you to think when you see this, you can do anything. You can make this if this is what you want. If you want to make a beautiful piece of furniture, you can do that. If you want to become a botanist, if you want to become a scientist, if you want to, I guess a botanist is a scientist, but if you want to become a mathematician and you're not good at math, you can do it. You just have to work. You can be something beautiful. You are something beautiful, but you can be whatever you want to be. You just have to fight for it. And so I hope when you look at this and you realize it may look easy, right? It may look like I just know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I just work at it. I just push through it. I Google it. I YouTube it. I fuck it up. I throw it away and I do it again. I also wanted you to have the record. The record is songs that we played at Mom's funeral, and songs that I know meant something to her and to you, and that would be something that you could put on and think of her. And the most important thing is that I want her to not just be a feeling. I've lost people, and the longer that goes by, they turn into a feeling. They turn from vivid memories of someone who you can recall specific memories, and we laughed about this, and just like over the years it disappears and it becomes just like a feeling, and that feeling is really positive. That feeling is love and longing and missing someone but it's a feeling. And I want you to have more than a feeling. I want you to hear the words that you said when we hiked and you talked about what she meant to you. I want you to remember the lessons. And not because it's painful, but because it's part of you. And I wish for myself too that I can have that and that I can always remember. I want it to be more than a feeling. And I want you to sit alone at night in your room or with Michael, with your family. And I want you to turn it on and I want you to play loud music like Mom would have loved. And I want you to watch it because that's what I did the other night. I just sat there in front of it and I put on my favorite music and I blasted it and I just watched it dance. And I was transported back to being a kid with Mom in the car with the music blaring. And I hope that it gives you that. And I hope that it's something beautiful that you keep. And I hope most of all, part of the reason why we're so close is because it's what Mom wanted, right? I mean, she pushed and pushed, and she was right. And I'm here to push you. And I'm here to push you to try hard. So when you look at it, I hope you think about Mom, and I hope you think about what it means to you. I hope you feel loved. I know you're going to look at it. I hope you're going to look at it and think, this is beautiful. But it's more than that, because it was hard. And I don't say that for credit. You don't have to thank me. I wanted to do this, but I want you to know it because I see in you that you can give up when it's hard. And I see also that you have a fire for certain things that you believe in where you will fight to the death and you're very powerful. But when things get hard, you got to push. You got to figure it out. When you don't know how to make the next thing, when you don't know how to, you have this thing in your brain that you want to make and you don't know how, you figure it out. And so I want you to know that there's a choice for every corner of this, every bevel, how I would bevel the little side on the angle on the edges, for how the back would fit in, for how deep it is, for what colors I would use. Why are the LEDs why are the LEDs green and blue? Because that's the color of Mom's dress. You know, why did I use bay laurel? Because it's a California wood that I want you to think of California. Why are the legs like that? Why is the light on the bottom? Why does it float? All of it's a choice. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you save this video and you watch it 40 years from now when I'm maybe dead. I don't know. But I love you. I love all of you. And I just hope that this means something to you and that you watch it and love it. I love you guys and I hope you enjoy it. Boof. All right, now a couple things for my video.